Passion, purpose, possibilities. They're all right there. But sometimes we need a little push. And that's where SheSez comes in. Think of it as a master class taught by the world's most interesting women, sharing stories and ideas because girlfriends help each other. This is SheSez with Linda Grasso. Hello and welcome to SheSez. Our guest today is Lynne Lear. Lynne is what you might call the quintessential sales executive. She's worked in sales for most of her life, first at News Corp and then with Disney's Go.com. Now, when that division folded during the internet bust in the early 2000s, she took a year off. She immersed herself in raising her two kids in Manhattan Beach. And then she did something really bold and something that is the reason I asked her to be here today. She co-founded a local private school. Lynne Lear, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so, you don't talk to many people who co-found a school. What we all do is we talk about what our local public school system doesn't have. Even if they're a great school system like yours in Manhattan Beach, it doesn't have this and it doesn't have this and it doesn't have this. For you, what it didn't have was smaller classes, exactly. The one-on-one. Share.
Yes, one of the main reasons we started the school, and it was a group of originally 5 friends who got together and tried to pull this off, and we worked on it for about 5 years. Was because there wasn't a private school option locally with smaller class sizes.
Now, that's so interesting because Manhattan Beach is this big community. There is a lot of money down there. Real estate prices, well, you're a realtor now, we sure would. So real estate prices are really high. It's interesting that there aren't more options down there in terms of private schools.
Well, I think it would have happened eventually. We just decided to be the ones to actually do it and execute.
Now, at the time, you weren't working full-time. You were being a full-time mom at that little
juncture.
I was
with Disney. And
you were with Disney then?
Yes.
Okay.
My kids were 2 and 4, actually, when we started.
Wow.
And
so what were those discussions like? You're sitting around at a cocktail party, and you're like, how did that all...
No way.
On the soccer field?
We were in each other's homes with the curtains drawn and the shades down because one of the things we faced was getting a lot of resistance from our local community because our local school system is so great in the public sense.
So in other words, you started talking about it and people were like, why do you guys want to do that?
Oh, yeah.
That's not cool.
It was met with big resistance. However, we had enough people supporting the idea that we raised $8 million pretty quickly after we germinated this idea and it grew into something really feasible.
So who are the 5 people? You don't have to tell me their names, but did everyone bring a complementary skill set? You had a sales background. Was one of them, say, an attorney?
Yes.
Oh, really?
We had too many attorneys on the crew. But that's an interesting thing because none of us came from the background of having education in our lives. And it's what we all learned very quickly, which is education is not run like a business. So even though we all had different skill sets from the business world, we actually had to open up our minds when we spoke about education.
Yeah, nobody had a PhD in education.
Not at all. And we actually ended up hiring someone very important and instrumental in helping open up the school from within education.
So you start these discussions behind your drawn blinds and your darkened rooms.
It's true.
What made you think you could take on something so big? This effort to build this school, it's in El Segundo. Tell me the name of it.
It's called the Vistamar School.
This effort to build the Vistamar School turned out to be huge. It ultimately had you guys buying the land and building it, and this is huge. What sort of made you think that you could do something like this?
I think once we got the right people in place to help us orchestrate what it's like to build a board of a school, and like we were talking about, we did have someone on the team who was in commercial real estate to look for a facility for us. And then we kind of approached certain people of like-mindedness, and we raised $8 million. We said, this is a go.
How did you raise the $8 million?
Private funds.
So
from our town.
Are you talking about like literally cold calling?
It's hard to cold call for that kind of money. It was really kind of a more grassroots personal event where we had, I can't tell you how many coffees I hosted in my home to educate people about what we're doing, why we're doing it, as we built the board, and I was in charge of building the board of trustees when we first opened.
So I was on a board once, and I found it very uncomfortable asking people for money. I mean, the reason why they ask you to go on a board very often is they want you to tap your network.
Yes.
It was just a hideous experience for me. How's your comfort level with that?
I have no problems.
Really?
No, I don't. I've been in sales my whole life, as you mentioned. And it's all in the presentation, and it's all, again, about what is the bang for your buck and what are you getting out of it and why should you invest. And I don't have that problem.
Did you try to focus people who sort of had roots in the community? I mean, because going to individuals, I would imagine would be tricky because, well, if their kids in, ninth grade or, they're only going to be there for such a short
That's right.
ride.
And this is just a high school, not the middle school. And it was hard to open getting people to trust us with all 4 grades. So we actually opened up with only 9th and 10th grades in 2005. And then the next year that rolled up, we had 9, 10, 11, and then 9, 10, 11, 12. And we grew the student body. And it's been phenomenally successful.
Were there a couple of key donors when they came on board?
Sure.
With big amounts.
Yes.
And were those firms and what was that like?
Private money donors.
Wow, that's
yes,
so interesting.
Very generous angels who we thank every day.
So there had to be a point in the discussions, and I'm talking early on when you started to be convinced that you could really make this happen, maybe even before you had money. Or was it when you got your first donations that you thought it would become a reality?
I think that's right. Coupled with finding a site was really difficult, actually. We ended up purchasing the old DirecTV building and then worked with architects locally to help us convert it into a school. And then it's getting people to take a chance on sending their kid to the school with no track record.
I cannot imagine how difficult that must have been. What was your sales line? How did you convince people to take a chance on you?
Well, I always think of a very good story. I was recruiting one of my friends for the board, and I invited him to come into a coffee where I think it was the mayor and the mayor's husband and people who had shown interest in the school. And my friend had not committed to supporting the idea of jumping on board yet. And as we went through the sales pitch of why we're building the school, that we have the demand, we did our market research, we did focus groups. We were a legitimate grassroots campaign. In the middle of the session, my friend who I was recruiting stood up and said, "Okay, look, this train's going out at the station. You're either getting on or not on. I'm on." And he helped me close this one family, which was awesome.
Wow. How many of the 5 co-founders stayed with the project from beginning to end? And what I mean by that is that, did you have some rotation? Because very often you come together as a cohesive group, and then something along the way, this person disagrees. This is not how it should be. And then the other 4 say, it is how it's going to be. And then that person leaves. I mean, you guys have to keep your similar goal and your mindset throughout that journey of forming that school. How often did people come in and out of the group?
And we had to write checks. And sometimes that's a divider because not everybody can write the same amount of donation. And that's part of what you're responsible for when you're on a board. So the original 5, 4 stayed, but the 5th family actually came back about 12 years later and still believed in the project. It just didn't work at that time. Then we developed our board to about 18 people. And that's when we started to truly introduce what the school is all about, which is a diverse community. We have, I think it's almost 50% of our students are on financial aid. So we draw from all parts of Los Angeles. And that was part of the mission of the school, so that we're not just seeing same belief systems, the same.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the big important parts that we did very successfully at Vistamar, is to establish this diverse culture.
It's also a non-denominational school.
Correct.
Tell me about your thinking there.
I think that was unanimous out of the gates. We just wanted to, we had an opportunity to develop the best of the best using best practices. And so we all invested our time and went to private schools around the country. And this is where I learned about this is not our typical business. Schools would invite us in and open up their finance books and say, here's what it is. And we kind of thought, wow, is anybody looking? But that's how education is. It's just a very different animal than running the corporate world. Um, so I forget the question.
You answered it.
Oh.
So along your journey of opening the school, you started working. You got your real estate license. You started
Yeah,
becoming a
same
realtor.
year. Yes.
You like to keep busy.
I tried to take a year off and be that tennis mom that I always wanted to be because I've worked my whole life, and I figured out I like wearing the tennis skirt, but not that much. And so I joined Shorewood at the time, real estate company locally, and opened the school.
Well, there had to be times though, your kids were still in the house at
Yes.
that stage, and there's a fair bit of driving and grocery shopping and all those things we do. And then you're a realtor and you're
Yes.
trying to establish yourself in a new sales arena.
Right.
Were there some times when you thought, why in the heck am I taking upon myself to build a school too?
No. It was it. I don't know. Maybe that's just the way I'm programmed. I don't really get to the point where I invest and put in time and then do a U-turn. It's, time to push through and execute and get things done.
Was there part of you that wanted to do it out of a love of your community? I know you're really deeply entrenched in the South Bay. You've lived there most of your adult life. I mean, you really love that community.
I do. It's an easy one to love, by the way. I just think the people there are so amazing, and the lifestyle is fabulous, and it's comfortable and relaxed. Yet everybody works very hard. So yeah.
And was your husband part of the 5?
Oh, sure. Well, it was 5 families, 5
Okay.
couples who, started the initial conversations, and then it grew and built out like the little pebble in the water.
So did you get the school finished in time for your own 2 kids to go there?
Way before my kids went there. Right. So we opened in 2005. We spent 5 years literally having weekly meetings 2-3 times a week to get everything launched and ready, and recruiting for a head of school because we had to recruit somebody who we don't have a track record. I mean, it was a lot of work, but we took it. It was just amazing. Our group was incredible. And then my kids didn't have to go, but they elected to go. They had options.
Damn right they did. Yeah.
Have to say I was kind of pleased, but they both did really well there and loved it and learned so much, more than just the academics, even though it's an incredibly rigorous academic school. Just being in environments where, you have to pay attention to thoughts of others and cultures of others to make it there. But it's a very accepting atmosphere. My kids loved it. They both did.
Was it an empowering experience for you to take on a project that was outside your realm? I mean, yes, you brought your sales skills in, but you're not a school founder.
Right.
How did that strike you personally? And did you feel stronger and more capable because you were able to do it?
It's funny. A lot of people ask me all the time, "Are you so proud of yourselves?" Or myself, I'll speak for me. I don't know. I don't think of it that way. It was something that needed to be done. We were the ones to do it. It happened to be an incredible project where I was involved for probably 12, 13 years total. And then my kids went, and I'm on to the next thing.
And what's your involvement now? How involved are you?
I still, I coach the kids for interviews into college. So I will go every year and sit with 5 or 6 students and do mock interviews to get them ready for their college applications. And then I take on a few that really want to talk more outside of that realm. I still send families, but I'm not on the board, and my kids are graduated. So it's less of a role for sure.
Yeah, it's such a long-lasting thing, a school. You know, I mean, that school will be there forever.
But to your point, things do have to rotate. You need fresh blood. You need new thinking on the board and the faculty all the way across. I call it the life cycle of the school. The originals are all, to my knowledge, were all kicked out the door. Like, they needed the new fresh thinking and new blood coming in. And
So where are your kids now? How old are they and where do they go to school?
I have a son graduating from Dartmouth College, and my daughter is a sophomore at Colgate in New York.
I have to tell a cute story right before we came in here. Lynn was in the lobby and Susan Feldman of One Kings Lane was the guest before. And I loved what you did. You met her. We both love One Kings Lane. We were like, Lynn was like,
Yeah,
I
that's
love
okay.
One Kings Lane. And you're like, do you think my son can get a job there?
Yeah, you hiring?
I love that. I mean,
Always a mother.
What we mamas won't do for our kids. And you know what? You got to help your kid try to get in the door these days. The job market is so tough.
It's tough, but I'm a believer. I won't do the work for him. If
Yeah.
I have a contact, I will say to my son, here you go. Here's a lead, but he has to follow up, and then mama steps back and lets him do the work.
100%. And by the way, Susan said, have him email me.
I know.
She's,
this would be funny if he actually sends in the resume.
And then Lynne Lear said to Susan, "Oh my God, I'm following on the heels of Susan Feldman from One Kings Lane.
Thank you.
Why? Why are you having me? Because I think you've done something extraordinary and really bold, and you've thought outside the box. I mean, we all are so concerned about education, and we want it to be just right for these kids. And often it's not. And we just, we go with it. And you didn't. You really saw a need, and you were really, really bold about it. It's really, really unusual, and it's to be commended.
Thank you.
So did you suffer from empty nest syndrome?
From what?
Empty nest
I'm kidding. Don't tell my children. I am a believer that if you're working or have a distraction, that it helps the empty nest transition. Of course, I miss my children, but that social media and telephone thing goes a long way. We didn't really have a lot of struggles, but we're pretty active in the community. We play tennis on Friday nights with our friends, and I have my book club that I started 18 years ago that we have monthly, and we just have a lot going on usually, so that helps. But I always coach a lot of friends who were defined by being the mother, where they gave up their careers to raise their children. I am coaching them all the time about, let's reinvent, let's get going on your phase 2. What do you want to do? Because you have to find a purpose, I think, to feel fulfilled. And people have to kind of take a step back, self-reflect, and then figure out what's important to them on their next phase.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key there is to really reach out and to be active and to push yourself. I think I've told this story before, but I just remember the, brief period where I wasn't working. For me, I was just kind of padding around in sweats and my Lululemons all day with my hair in a ponytail, maybe showered, maybe didn't. It was fabulous.
Right.
But it's easy to sort of lose your mojo in the professional world and feel a loss of self-confidence. And I relate to many of the women that I talk to who express that. You've kept in, girl. You've been in the game and you've kept one foot in, and so you probably never experienced that. I mean, you said you were a tennis mom for a brief period, but it just wasn't for you.
But that's also how I'm wired. I mean, there's no judgment. I think if people
100% no judgment.
And because we are moms and we struggle with the other side of, should I be home more when we're working all the time? So it can cut both ways.
It does cut both ways. And I remember working full time and feeling like I was a crappy...
A bad mom.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
I'll never forget. I went to, I don't know, my kid was probably like 8 or 9, and it was the last day of school, and they were asking the kids to recite a poem. And I, cut out of work and sweated all the way up and got there and ran in my high heels. But no, I was dressed up then because I was coming from work. Ran across the parking lot in my high heels, and I got there just in time as they were starting, and my kids saw me, and I was in the presentation room, and his essay was, "Why I Wish My Mommy Didn't Work."
Oh, boy.
And I
Did you take a U-turn at the door?
Oh, I was just like, this whole thing, I wish my mom could be there like all the other moms in the class. And
I know.
I wish my mommy had been there for the Mother's Day tea, but I was the only child. It was all poetry. It was much more beautiful than I'm making it. But, that feeling of
I know. But then I have to look at it. I have a daughter, and I think I'm role modeling some good things there and for my son. And it's funny because on Mother's Day, I have asked my children, since they were able to write, don't get me a present. Don't spend any money. I just want a love letter. And to this day, they'll send me love letters. And one of the things they always say in the letter, and it's very sweet, is, "You are the hardest working mom I know, and I'm so proud of you." Like, they kind of take it
I love that.
from their perspective of, maybe I'm doing something right.
Mhm.
Let's hope.
What's real estate been like for you? Do you enjoy it?
Love it.
What is it you love about it?
It actually suits my skill set because every job that I've had has kind of built and prepared me for the next stop. So when I was in sales and marketing for 15 years, I could parlay that contract negotiation skill and the advertising detail work and learning how to market properly and apply it to my own real estate business. And it's local. I'm not traveling anymore. So I just get in my car and go up and down the beach. And it's wonderful. And I am lucky and fortunate where I have a nice practice. And I'm with Christie's. Shorewood's no longer. I know that. I know. I'll tell you later.
I said Shorewood.
It's
Did that just
okay.
change?
Well, it changed. We actually started Christie's in Manhattan Beach about a year and a half ago.
Oh, okay. Girl, you need to update your bio. It said Shorewood.
Oh, gosh. Maybe I sent you my old one. I'm so sorry.
Did. That's okay. I forgive you.
Okay.
Christie's.
Christie's International Real Estate.
I like that. That's not, is that like Christie's the auction house?
It is. Exactly.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so it's great. And then one thing that I'm doing to kind of evolve into my next phase within real estate is I'm doing remodels and the flipping
Mm-hmm.
to kind of add a little bit of my staging and my architecture and other design passions right now. So that's fun.
So you are constantly renewing yourself. I mean, you sort of go seamlessly from one thing to the next. Have you always been pretty confident and capable?
I don't know.
I think you have. I've known you for a while.
It's just this weird drive and this weird, again, I see it as an involvement of what prepares you for the next. And yeah, that's what I do.
Well, I find the entire package impressive.
You're very sweet. Thank you.
Lynn, I've loved having you. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
Thanks so much for joining us on She Says. It's been a pleasure to have you as our listener. Really appreciate it. Give us some feedback on Apple Podcasts under ratings and reviews if you get a chance. Thank you so much.